All right, shalom and good evening to everybody. Welcome back to our class. Last time we talked about Yeshayahu HaNavi. So I figured we have to counter it with Yirmiyahu HaNavi, who's actually the next prophet, right? If you look into the books of the Navi, you have Yeshayahu and then Yirmiyahu. And by show of hands, how many of you were able to print the papers I sent? Have them? Forget about print, have them. Are you able to access them? Yes? Awesome. Okay. Hey, if you're saving all the trees in the world, I'm okay with that. As long as you have the texts available, that's fine. I also sent last week's appendage again with the monarchy, just so that we know where we're talking about. So if you'll notice, the title of this week's class is Yirmiyahu's Suicide Mission. Okay? We're going to talk about why his mission was one of suicide, why in the world he signed up for it, and why he was actually the ideal candidate for it. We're going to later ask ourselves the same questions, okay? But we're going to have to get there. Meaning, what is our suicide mission? What are we willing to put in for it? Why would we sign up for it? And more. But first, let's start with Yirmiyahu. I want to look at the paper, The Jewish Monarchy, just so I can put it into perspective of when are we talking about. So look at the chart. You'll notice last week, 2 weeks ago, we talked about Yeshayahu HaNavi. The 10 tribes were already being taken. At the end of his prophecy, they were already going to be taken into Galut by, who takes the 10 tribes?
Sorry, who took the 10 tribes to Galut? Is this the question?
That is the question. Nebuchadnezzar is the one who ultimately destroys the Bet HaMikdash and takes the remaining 2.5 tribes. Who takes the 10 tribes? Do we know? So if you look at the northeast of Israel, there's a place that we call Assyria, right? Ashur. You had Sancherev. Rings a bell? Yeah? So Sancherev Melech Ashur comes and takes the 10 tribes. Now, while the 10 tribes are gone, we still have the kingdom of Yehudah, right? So Yisrael is gone. The kingdom of Yehudah is here. Though don't think the kingdom of Yehudah was in any way united. We're talking about post-Menashe HaMelech, right? And if you look at the last few kings, right after Ammon, you have Yoshiyahu, Yehoyachaz, Yehoyakim, Yehoyachin, and Tzidkiyahu. Now you'll notice something interesting. There are 2 stars, one by Yehoyachaz and one by Yehoyachin. If you look at the bottom, what do those stars tell you? How long did they actually rule? Yeah. So you have Yehoyachaz is king for 3 months, and Yehoyachin is also king for 3 months. We're talking very insignificant kings. It also is telling of the time. When the leadership keeps changing, ultimately it means there's chaos, right? There's some kind of unrest going on, and that's the truth. We enter a time period that is extremely chaotic, which ultimately leads to the destruction. The destruction doesn't happen one sunny day. Nebuchadnezzar marches from Bavel into Yerushalayim. It's a buildup of years and years of an infrastructure that was falling apart. Similar to, I think I may have mentioned it last time, the 1929 crash, right, which leads into the Great Depression. It didn't happen October 29th, 1929. That was just the end of many, many years of corruption, many years of overbuying, selling, economic unrest, and that's the result. You have the same thing over here. If you look, Yirmiyahu spans the time from Yoshiyahu all the way to Tzidkiyahu. Tzidkiyahu is the last king who ultimately goes into exile with the Jews. That is officially when the kingdom of Yehudah ends. So unlike the kingdom of Israel, which ended a couple of years earlier, the kingdom of Yehudah continues. So that's the reign of Yirmiyahu. Let's look. So I just wanted to show you in context, what are we talking about? Those are the years we're talking about. So who is Yirmiyahu? What do you know about him? Where have you heard his name?
I know that he wrote Eicha and the Book of Kings. And I know he cries a lot. He's very sad.
Yirmiyahu HaNavi, that is a very accurate description of him. Firstly, he writes the book of Eicha. When do we read the book of Eicha? Tisha B'Av. What is the book of Eicha about? Why do we read it on Tisha B'Av?
The destruction of the first temple?
Yeah, say it with more confidence.
The destruction of the temple?
Yes, it is the destruction of the first temple, like you said correctly. Yirmiyahu is living through this chaos of, he knows what's going to happen. He also knows how to prevent what's going to happen. And he goes on a mission for 40 years. Remember Noach when he's building the Teva and people look at him like he's crazy, right? And day in, day out. Yirmiyahu is very similar in that capacity. He comes to the Jewish people all the time, giving them musar, rebuking them, telling them the end is near, repent, O sinners, right? The end is near, the Bet HaMikdash is going to be destroyed. This is a preventable catastrophe. This is what you need to do to make sure it doesn't happen. And ultimately,
Was he the Navi who had to marry a prostitute? Sorry.
that is a very good question. I don't think so. I think that was Yeshayahu Navi, but I could be wrong. I think that was Yeshayahu, but I could be wrong. Yeah. You have craziness, meaning he talks himself blue. Not only, now there's one thing to be, the annoying person who's always the doomsday teller, always the eternal critic, the person who no matter what's going right will always indicate to you what's wrong. Yeah. By the way, I always think they make like great editors because they can catch like every tiny error. Doesn't matter how beautiful your paragraph is, the only thing they saw is the word you misspelled. Right? Doesn't matter how amazing the party you set up is, the only thing they notice is the cups were on the wrong place and it's the wrong etiquette. These people can drive you insane because they're annoying, but ultimately they're very helpful because they help you make things with more finesse. They help you smooth out the details in a way that the person who cares only about the big picture and filling the big stuff doesn't always remember those tiny details. You have somebody who is talking to the Jewish people, and I want to talk about who is he. Why does he get treated so differently than Yeshayahu? And why does he keep doing what he does? So look at the first pasuk. By the way, when I was preparing, I couldn't help but marvel how sometimes we look for so many outside sources to complement a class, when all you need to do is study the actual text. It doesn't always need that much extra because the text itself is just so incredibly dense and in need of interpretation. Let's look at Yirmiyahu Aleph. It says, Divrei Yirmiyahu ben Chilkiyahu. So these are the words of Yirmiyahu, the son of Chilkiyahu. What do you know? Based on the principle we said, anytime you see a Navi, Ben, and it tells you his father, what's the rule? Very nice. His father was also a Navi. Min HaKohanim. So we know that he's a Navi. What else is he? He's from the family of Kohanim. Asher ba'anatot beretz Binyamin. Okay, so first we have to set the stage. There were two different Kohanim in the times of really David and then Shlomo HaMelech. We had Evyatar and Tzadok HaKohen. Evyatar ultimately stumbles and gets banished from the active kehuna. He and his family, they move out to Anatot, which is on the northeast of Yerushalayim. It's on the outskirts. It was a city full of Kohanim. But they weren't the ones who actually served in the Bet HaMikdash. So you have Yirmiyahu, who's part of this tribe. He's part of Binyamin. He's part of the Kohanim. Why the Kohanim living in the Nachala of Binyamin? Why are they living in Binyamin's land? Well, let me ask you a different question. Where did the Kohanim live?
They were not given any land. They had to live somewhere with dead people, right?
Very nice. The Kohanim did not have a piece of land. The reason being, which tribe were they a part of? Levi. Why does Levi not get a piece of land?
Because they work in the temple.
Okay, say more. What is the job of Levi?
It's the music.
That's in the Bet HaMikdash itself. But tell me, Levi as a tribe, what was his job? Okay, so the job of Levi was Yoru Mishpatecha LiYisrael. Their job was to be the teachers, the educators of the Jewish people. Today we live in a world where we don't actually educate people anything. I teach in a high school. What in the world could you teach in 45 minutes? It takes 10 minutes to say, hi, how are you? Yeah. It takes another 5 minutes at the end of class to pack your bags, think about the lunch you're going to be eating. So already you shaved off 15 minutes of the class, so you're left with 30 minutes. How much can you really learn in 30 minutes? Shevet Levi, now if you'll recall, this was part of the curse and blessing that Yaakov Avinu gives them at the end of his life. He tells Shimon and Levi that their brotherhood doesn't work. And he tells Levi, achalkem b'Yaakov, afitzem b'Yisrael. I'm going to spread you across the Jewish people, and you're never going to be one unit that's going to be able to gang up with Shimon. The ideal is the Leviim would live with the Jewish community. They would become absorbed by the Jewish community. And through living, breathing, eating, that's the way they would teach. It was a natural process of learning, because if you're sitting with somebody and you're eating with them and you're talking with them and you wake up and they're still there, so there's almost this osmosis that happens, which is a much more natural way of learning, right? It's not taking a textbook and cramming it into your brain so that you could take the test and then leave all the text over there and never remember a thing you ever learned, right? I think it was Mark Twain who said he never let his schooling get in the way of his education, right? So much of the school system, it doesn't really work. Why we still keep it up, I don't know. Aside from that, many people need jobs, which I agree. I'm one of them. But I think that it's something that needs to be reanalyzed. Who does it really work for? And even those who it does work for, does it work because the system works, or does it work for them despite the system? There's a difference there, right? So you have Shevet Levi. There are 48 different nachalot, 48 different pieces of land that they were in. Anatot being one of them. So Yirmiyahu is a Kohen, but he's not an active Kohen. He's a Navi, and yet he's not from something very important. What was Yeshayahu that Yirmiyahu is not? Yeshayahu ben Amotz. Remember, who was he related to?
The king.
Very nice. So if you ever thought the Jewish world or the world at large was corrupt, it didn't start today. The difference between Yeshayahu and Yirmiyahu is not what they said. You'll recall Yeshayahu was not kind. He didn't mince words in calling out the Jewish people. But he was protected. He was protected because he was part of the aristocracy. He was part of the leadership. He was part of the people that nobody would go up against. Because why would I? I wouldn't risk bullying somebody that knows they can retaliate. I wouldn't risk mocking somebody that I know has the power to hurt me back. But Yirmiyahu, why not? He's a perfect candidate to bully, to harass, and ultimately almost try to kill. Not almost try, they tried to kill him, they just didn't succeed. And you look at this evil where they're both bringing the same message. Yet one of them comes out unscathed and the other one is almost killed. Why? Nothing to do with their message. Everything to do with what we say their protectia, right? What is protectia? Connections. Very nice. It's connections. It's why when I used to be in school, the principal's kid never got into trouble, right? And the rabbi's kid was never going to sit detention. And the rabbi's daughter was never going to be sent home for something. But the other kids could, because why not? Right? It's not fair, but that's the way it works. That's the way it works. People are not picked on necessarily because of what they're doing as much as who they are. You're some.
Maybe this is why Flora Sassoon had so much standing, because she was super rich.
I agree. I think that you should know when we talk about the Dayanim, if you remember, it's 2 weeks ago, Parshat Yitro, right? Yitro comes and tells Moshe, you're doing too much. It's going to weigh you down. Figure out a system of Dayanut. What are one of the requirements of the Dayanim? Very nice. So they cannot be paid off. In addition to not being able to pay it off, they have to be people of means. They do have to have money. Whether we like it or not, we live in societies that money gives you status. Yes. Now it does that. They don't need that status necessarily, but with that status comes the ability of saying, keep your $1 million, you can't bribe me. I could pay my bills without yours. You're not going to be able to sway me because of your economic influence because I have my own. It's really difficult for somebody to make a decision that's correct and proper when their decision is going to cost them the job that puts bread on their table. And the bully knows that. I know that I can coerce you to do something because you have what to lose by not listening. And that's not fair. But that's the way it is. So I think that's an important, now I want to show you even more so. You think the community hates you? Look at this. So this is from the Psikta de Rev Kahana, where in the beginning he talks about what is the name of Yirmiyahu. So first, for example, Yirmiyahu, Shebiyamav Naaseh Bet HaMikdash Irumin. He says, if you look at the name of Yirmiyahu, it's like Irumin, which means neglected. During his time period, the Bet HaMikdash becomes neglected. Davar achar, another thing, Yirmiyahu, Shebiyamav Nitromema Midat Hadin. Yirmiyahu from the word ram, which means to raise up. And in his days, the Midat Hadin was raised up and fully executed against the people. If you look down, look at the bold a second on the bottom. Yirmiyahu, Hayu Yisrael mizalzelim alav. The Jewish people would mock him. They would make fun of him. V'amru, and they would say, Lo mibnei banea shel Rachav hazonahu. Isn't he an ancestor of Rachav the prostitute? Who are you to come talk to us, the Jewish people? What did your great-great-grandmother do? Remind us, what was your family business? And therefore the pasuk must mention his lineage. Divrei Yirmiyahu ben Chilkiyahu. Don't think that his lineage is tainted. Rather, you should know he's the son of the Kohanim, of the Nevi'im. And yes, he may be from the ancestry of Rachav. So what? This is something fascinating. We're going to talk about it a little bit later, where the Jewish people, instead of actually arguing the words that he says, submit themselves to cheap slander and character, there's a word, character assassination. Yeah. Instead of arguing what he's actually saying, listening to the message, thinking about what he said, they just sling mud at him. Now, to be fair, this is one of the cruelest things to do. Do you choose who your lineage is? Do you choose who your heritage is from? You know, if you're going to pick on somebody for the way they look, what are you doing? It's not, now, yeah, today we have plastic surgery, so people could change everything, right? But you're picking on things that are unfair. If you pick on my character traits, okay, that's something you could argue I could change. My philosophy, my ideas, the things I say, those are all things that they're fair game to pick on. Why are they picking on his lineage? Number one, is it his fault that he's a descendant of Rachav? One. Two, who said it's problematic? To the contrary, we know that Rachav is held in the highest of esteem to the extent that she does the teshuvah and she marries Yehoshua. She doesn't marry any Jew. She marries the leader of the Jewish people. I'd love to see that go over in 2021. Forget about the part that she was a prostitute. I'd love to see that the chief rabbi marries a convert. I'd love to see that happen. Because in my opinion, you want a super Jew? You want somebody who's actually committed to being Jewish? Take a convert. They're the people who in adulthood made a decision to jump in and say, I want to be part of Am Yisrael. They're not the punk who was born Jewish and doesn't even know what it means. And yet they're slinging mud for absolutely no reason. Because it's much easier to kill the messenger than to actually read the message. It's so much easier to hate you because you're saying such evil things about me than analyzing, well, maybe you're saying things that are true. Maybe it's hurting me so much because it's accurate. I wouldn't care about what you said if there wasn't truth to it. If you tell me I have horns on my head, that doesn't hurt me. Guess why? I know I have a mitpachat on my head, but horns I don't hide underneath. So I don't care if you tell me that. If you tell me something that's true, it's going to hurt me. So why is the instinctual reaction character assassination? It's a good question. But that's what they do to Yirmiyahu. Now, if you look at the psukim following, you'll notice something very interesting. Because I titled it Yirmiyahu's suicide mission, but it's not fair because really, he didn't choose it. Let's look at the psukim. Yeah, I'm on source 3. Vayhi dvar Adonai elai le'emor, and it was the word of Hashem to me, saying, B'terem etzareka babeten yidaticha. Even before you were born, I've already selected you. Uveterem tetzei merechem hikdashticha, navi lagoyim netaticha. Hashem's talking to Yirmiyahu, and he says, Yirmiyahu, I've already pre-selected you for the job of prophet. Even before you were born, this was the task I was designating. Vayomer Adonai, and Hashem says, Va'omar, aha Adonai, hine lo yadati, daber kinar anochi. And Yirmiyahu, he rejects this. He says, who am I? I'm so young. We know that Yirmiyahu starts prophesying at a very young age. I believe 13, but don't hold me on that. He says, I'm so young. Who does this conversation sound like? You know another conversation that goes like this.
Is it like Moses?
It is. Now say it confidently.
It's just like Moses.
Very good. It's just like Moshe. When Moshe bumps into the sneh, and Hashem says, Sha'al na'alecha me'al raglecha ki admat kodeshu. Take off your shoes because this is holy land. And they start a 7-day conversation. We read it in one parsha. This is 7 days of arguing, Hashem, I don't want this job. I'm the wrong person. It's not me. I don't want to do it. You find the same thing here. Yirmiyahu says, but I'm too young. Who's going to listen to me? It's too big of a task. Vayomer Adonai elai, al tomar nar anochi. Hashem says, don't say you're too young. Ki al kol asher eshlachacha telech. Because everything that I will send you to do, you will do. Ve'et kol asher atzaveka tidaber. And everything I command you to say, you will say. Al tiram mipneim. Don't be afraid of them. Ki itcha ani la'atzil chanum Adonai. Hashem says, I promise I have your back. You are going to go into the lion's den. You're going to go tell the people all the things that they don't want to hear. Don't be afraid. I am the one sending you, and I promise you that I will be there to save you. Vayishlach Adonai et yado, vayiga al pi. Hashem struck him on his mouth. Vayomer Adonai elai hinei netaticha dvarai bepicha. Here, I've given you the ability to speak. You have the same similar sentence by Moshe, where Hashem argues back and says, Misam pel adam. Moshe, who do you think put speech into the human being? Who do you think gave the human being the ability to speak? Don't be afraid. Now this is a sentence. You look at the bolded sentence. Re'eh hifkadeticha hayom. Yirmiyahu, you're concerned. You're concerned that you're coming and you are going to berate the people, and you read the psukim, the things he calls them. I don't even feel comfortable saying some of them. The comparisons he makes of who the Jewish people are similar to. Right? How many of you have looked through the Navi Yirmiyahu a little bit? If he was talking to you, how would you feel? The words are harsh. Shuvu banim shovevim, you mischievous people, you evil people, you sons of the... He uses such harsh language. What's his goal? Because his goal is not to be cruel to the Jewish people. There's a huge distinction between the person who hates you and therefore takes any opportunity to mock you and rebuke you and poke fun of you, to the person who loves you, cares about you, and wants the best for you, and therefore will call you out on any slight deviance because they want to make sure that you're perfect. Look at the bolded pasuk. Re'eh hifkadeticha hayom. See that today I've appointed you. Hayom hazeh al hagoyim v'al hamamlachot. I've appointed you on the nations and the kingdoms, meaning he doesn't only give nevuah to the Jewish people. He's also prophesying to the world. Lintosh v'lintotz, to destroy and to overthrow. Ulahavid v'laharos, to uproot and to pull down, to destroy and to overthrow, all with the reasoning of livnot v'lintoa. The reason you're going to throw over, the reason you're going to destroy, the reason that 40 years you're going to give nivuah to the people that is so harsh is only because the purpose is to break down so that livnot v'lintoa, so that ultimately we can rebuild and replant. One of the most annoying, if not frustrating things is when you build and about 3/4 in you realize, I mismatched it. I put the wrong screws in the wrong place. I didn't realize side A had actually 3 screws, side B had 2. It's supposed to be the outside, it's not the inside. That frustration of, so now I have to take it all apart? Seriously? I'm 3/4 done. I'm 12 pages into my writing, and now I read the prompt, and I think what I wrote is not actually what was asked for. That feeling of frustration and horror when things have to be broken down is tangible. Hashem tells Yirmiyahu, the purpose of all that you do is not to destroy the Jewish people. Yes, you may look like the demolition crew, but you're only going to be putting in the cyanide to blow up the buildings so that you can level the ground and start again. And ultimately, we see that Yirmiyahu takes on this task. Yirmiyahu goes to the Jewish people and in an almost brazen fashion talks to them, rebukes them. They're busy with their Nevi'im shekel. They have their false prophets who are busy telling them, don't worry, the glory of the Jewish people is back. And this is now to be fair, Yirmiyahu was in a time where there's a slight window that things seem to be getting better. So the false prophets jump on the bandwagon and they tell the Jewish people, see, Yirmiyahu is a liar. And Yirmiyahu says, it's not true. They're lying to you. They're giving you false hope. They're telling you things are going to get better. You could be complacent, keep doing what you're doing. I'm telling you it's not true. I want us to look at for a second, so what happens to Yirmiyahu? Because he's talking, the people hate him. The people hate what he's saying. He keeps talking. Let's look at towards the end, Yirmiyahu Lamed Zayin, chapter 37. So this is really the end. The end in the sense, we're up to Tzidkiyahu. It's the last king before Nebuchadnezzar comes in, destroys the Bet HaMikdash. Nebuzaradan comes and takes the Jewish people to exile. This is it. We're really at the end. It's almost frightening how somebody can spiral and spiral and spiral and yet still not come to a complete stop until they tumble to the bottom, right? In social work, we always talk about raising the platform for people. Do people really have to hit rock bottom before they can recover? Or can we raise that bottom so that they don't have to fall so far? And unfortunately, we see this on a national level. The Jewish people are facing the threat of their entire nation being destroyed, the people being murdered. Let's read. So this is Tzidkiyahu is the king. Now you should know Tzidkiyahu, if you look at his name, what is the shoresh? What is the root of his name? Tzedek, right? Tzadik, Tzedek. Tzidkiyahu is an interesting character for another conversation. He himself wasn't a bad person. But his inability to lead the nation ultimately makes him bad. It doesn't help that you have a moral compass. If you're in the position of leadership and you cannot lead, and you cannot keep the nation from straying and make significant changes, so what kind of leader are you? Let's look inside. So here's what happens. This is Vayimloch Melech Tzidkiyahu ben Yoshiyahu tachat Kanayahu ben Yoyakim asher himlich Nebuchadnezzar melech Bavel beretz Yehuda. So you have Tzidkiyahu, who is the king, and he's really not the king. He's a puppet because it's a king, but they're under the jurisdiction of Bavel. ולא שמע הוא ועבדיו ועם הארץ אל דברי אדוני אשר דיבר ביד ירמיהו הנביא, and they weren't listening to the words of Hashem nor to the words of Yirmiyahu הנביא. וישלח המלך צדקיהו את יהויחל בן שלמיה וצבניהו בן מעשיה הכהן אל ירמיהו הנביא לאמור התפלל נא בעדנו אל אדוני אלוהינו. They're not going to listen to the words of Yirmiyahu, but they're going to use him so that he prays for them. Quite ironic. When it comes to give them actual advice, I don't want to hear you. But when I need you, I'll use you. Think about the people in your life who are like that. They come to ask you for advice. You spend time, you talk to them. You think you've made a significant difference in their life. And then 3 weeks later, they call you, same problem, crying. Now they don't want your advice, now they just want your money. Now they don't want your advice, they just need you to come pick them up from somewhere. Yeah, that's the way they treat Yirmiyahu. So they didn't yet put him into prison. So you have here vultures, right? Vultures come when they smell death. It's the same thing on a national level. Mitzrayim, the Chaldeans, right? Nebuchadnezzar, everybody knows the Jewish nation is falling, and everybody wants to come take a piece of this. So that's the scene where Mitzrayim, the Chaldeans, the Bavlim, all are trying to come take Israel. So what happens? Here, look at... So Yirmiyahu is talking to the Jewish people, and I want to look at the bolded. Vayetze Yirmiyahu mirushalayim. Yirmiyahu leaves Yerushalayim, right, where the city capital is. Lalechet eretz Binyamin. He's going back to his hometown. Lechalek misham betoch ha'am. Right, he wants to go back and separate himself. The people aren't listening to him. They're not taking his advice. They're not his military advice. Vayihu b'Shaar Binyamin, and he's standing at the gate of his own hometown. So these are his people. It's his family. V'sham bal pkudat ushmo Yirmiyahu ben Shelemiah ben Hananiah. So you have the leader standing at the gate. Vayitpos et Yirmiyahu Navi. I'm on page 2. And he grabs onto Yirmiyahu. And he says to him, El hakazdim ata nofel. What a traitor you are. Oh, so now you work with the Chaldeans, don't you? Why? If you look a few psukim back, Yirmiyahu tells Tzidkiyahu, don't fight the Chaldeans. Don't fight the Kasdim because you're not going to win. So tell your army to come back, pull back, maintain the peace that we have. Why would you fight a war that we're not going to win? And he leaves Yerushalayim. He comes back to his own hometown, and at the gates of the city, they grab him and say, what a traitor. You've defected, and now you're part of the Kasdim. Vayomer Yirmiyahu, and Yirmiyahu responds, Sheker. It's not true, that's a lie. Eineni nofel ala Kasdim. I'm not a traitor to the cause. I'm not on the team of the Kasdim. I'm not on the team of the Chaldeans. I'm telling the Jews what to do that will save the Jewish nation. V'lo shama elav, they don't listen to him. Vayitpos Yirmiyahu b'Yirmiyahu vayiveu el hasarim. So Yirmiyahu, the general, brings him in front of the other generals. So what happens? Vayiktefu hasarim al Yirmiyahu. They jump on him. V'yiku oto. They beat him. We're not talking about like a little slap. They're beating him. V'natnu oto bet ha'asur bet Yehonatan hasofer. They put him into prison. Right? He committed treason according to them. Whether he did or didn't is irrelevant. They've decided he committed treason. So he's now in prison. And you read the next few psukim about prison. Ultimately, Tzidkiyahu wants to hear, does Yirmiyahu have a message for me? So Tzidkiyahu manages to get him out of the prison where his hometown people, his neighbors, his cousins, his uncles, are keeping him captive, and Tzidkiyahu brings him back. Now if you look at the bolded, Vayishma, now again notice, Tzidkiyahu wants to hear the message. But Tzidkiyahu's army, their soldiers, the generals, the nobles, they don't want the truth. Vayishma Shivati Ben Matan. So we have Shivati Ben Matan, Ugdaliyahu Ben Pashru, Vyuchal Ben Shelemiyahu, Upashru Ben Malkiah. So all these important people, they heard et hadvarim asher Yirmiyahu midaber el kol ha'am lemor. They heard what Yirmiyahu said. What did he say? Ko amar Adonai, so has Hashem said, Hayoshev ba'ir hazot yamut b'cherev. Those who are sitting in this city. Which city? Where's Tzidkiyahu? Where's Tzidkiyahu the king?
In Jerusalem? I'm just guessing.
Don't guess. Say it again, Miriam, with confidence.
In Yerushalayim.
Yafeh mod, in Yerushalayim, right? He's in Yerushalayim. Said, you heard what Yirmiyahu said? Our city, our capital, we're going to be killed by the sword. People are going to be starving. And he said, if you go out and try to make peace with the Kasdim and stop fighting them, they will live. At least they will live. He said, you heard what else he said? That Hashem's going to give our city into the hands of the Bavdim. Vayomru hasarim, and these generals say El HaMelech to the king Tzidkiyahu, Yumatna et ha'ish hazot. This person committed treason. Yirmiyahu has to be killed. Ki al ken hu merapeh et yedei anshe hamilchama hanisharim be'ir hazot. You know what he's doing? He's making all of us to feel weak. He's making us all feel scared. And those who are willing to fight, they're going to hear the words of the prophet and they're going to say, forget it, fight's over. What do? This person does not want the good of the nation. Yirmiyahu is coming predicting doom, telling the Jewish people that they're going to die by the sword, that they're going to be killed, they're going to be hurt, they're going to be murdered. He is just detracting from the war effort. He's making everybody want to defect because the war is not worth fighting. He's committing treason. Kill him. He said, I can't do anything. But if you want to do something, I'm not going to stop you. Ultimately, if you continue reading, they take Yirmiyahu and they throw him into this pit full of water, hoping to drown him. Now, what Hashem does is he does a miracle and he raises the earth under the pit so that Yirmiyahu is now stuck in a pit, but it's not full of water, it's full of mud. Now, I don't know about you, but if you've ever done anything with mud, okay? They have these mud baths that they charge you $200 in the Dead Sea. Only in Israel could they do that. They take mud, which I guarantee you probably is mud from China, resell it to the tourists as mud from Israel, salt from Sodom. I once saw, when I was growing up, we had this little can, and it said ear from Israel. It takes a certain amount of brilliance and chutzpah to be able to package ear and then send it and charge $10.99 so tourists buy ear from Israel. If that's not marketing, I don't know what is. But mud is very heavy, right? If you've ever put your hands under mud, it's heavy. It weighs you down. There's a reason that many people, we talk about quicksand. The quicksand doesn't actually eat people alive. It's not like Vatiftach Pi'ar. It's not like Korach, where the land opened up and swallowed people. Very often, the people who are getting stuck in the mud, their body just shuts down from the crushing power of the sand. Yes? So that's what's happening to Yirmiyahu. He's slowly dying in this pit. And the people around come and they start making fun. And they say, Yirmiyahu, why don't you put your head down? Maybe that way you'll just rest in peace forever. And Tzidkiyahu ultimately says, give him some food. Keep him alive. But nobody is willing to take him out. Somebody, again, you have to think about this craziness. How many of you know about the kamikaze pilots from World War II? Tell me who they are. What did they do?
So they were Japanese pilots, and what they would do is they would, I think if I remember, because there's a film called Torah, and I remember this, they would rather crash the plane and die than be taken hostage or captured by the enemy and made into prisoners of war. I think that's what they were.
Wait, so you're saying something correct. They would crash, but it wasn't necessarily to prevent being POWs, prisoners of wars. They were actually sent, when they would sign up on their sheets, do you want to be a kamikaze pilot or not? They said they had to circle one of the two options. They knew they were going on a suicide mission. The goal was to take these aircrafts and turn them into missiles, but they were pilot automated missiles ultimately. So those who were going in knew they would never come out. You have to ask yourself, who signs up for this job? Now we know there's a whole string of political suicides, they call them, where people for political reasons are willing to kill themselves. I couldn't find this. I was looking at it a few weeks ago and I couldn't find the guy's name, so you may know. There's actually a Russian, I believe he's Russian, but maybe Chechenian. A Jewish Israeli professor of mathematics. Look at the pictures. I'm going to try to find the article. He has a long white beard, a big kippah. So he actually, many years ago, tried to commit suicide in front of one of the communist statues as a political stunt. Now, he actually survived and ultimately emigrated to Israel, but he's not the only one. There are people who you see that sign up for causes, and we're talking about extreme of suicide, but you see people who sign up for causes and you wonder what makes that person stand up for this. Because popularity, they don't gain. Money, they don't get. Honor, definitely not. You know, there are certain nice causes everybody likes to do. I just read about in Africa, actually I saw, it was a tiny clip where somebody in Africa was actually talking about the orphanages. And they said, please stop setting up orphanages here. We actually don't need orphanages. But because you keep sending funding for orphanages, there's a whole underground of people who steal kids so that they can set up an orphanage, so they can get funding, because we love orphanages. It makes the white man feel really good when they stand near somebody black and they're taking on the white man's burden that nobody asked them to take on. It feels really good. We like taking on causes that nobody asked us to do. But what about the people who fight for the underdog, for the unpopular cause, for the cause that nobody wants to hear about? What makes somebody stand up for that? What makes somebody say, you know what, my life's mission is going to be to stand up against fill in the blank. And I don't care if it means that I'm never going to be able to go to Bet Knesset again, and that my kids won't have a school to be in. And maybe my children won't have marriageable options in the town that I'm not in. But I am willing to stand up for what's right. My mission is to change the injustice that I see, regardless of the price that I pay. And you see that over here, where Yirmiyahu, now to be fair, he was chosen for the job. Yeah. But he doesn't defect and say, I'm not doing it, Hashem, I can't. The people they're killing me. The people are hurting me, my family. My own family members are turning against me. At this point, when do you say I retire from the job? See, the difference between a job and passion is very simple. A job is there to get you money, to keep you financially safe, economically stable. When it doesn't do any of those, or it brings too much pain and suffering, you change jobs. That's the way it works. Meaning if it's not profitable for you anymore, whether financially or emotionally, it's time to find a new job. When it comes to passion, it's never about the money. Because normally the things that we're passionate about, they don't normally bring in the money. All the nonprofits that you sign up for, they bank on you being passionate, and that's why they don't have to pay you for it. That's the way it works. Because passion is not about me. It's about me seeing something in the world that I cannot be silent about. I cannot just look the other way. And I'm okay with going to the end of the world. I recently saw there was a very strange documentary. Strange for the following reason. It was about, I would like to say, I haven't seen the documentary, it was about children, I think it was about the children kidnapping ring in the United States. Yes? Which you should know, I was in an Uber. You never know who you're going to meet. You think the cabs in Israel are interesting? So I was in an Uber taking my kids home from school, and I asked the Uber driver, like, is this what he does all the time? So he said, no. I said, okay, so what else do you do? He said, oh, actually, I work for the Bureau of Trafficking. I said, really? Tell me. So he works here in downtown San Diego, and he says, unfortunately, so I asked him, what's the most shocking thing you've ever seen? He said one of the hardest things he's ever seen was there was a huge caravan of children that had crossed over from the Mexican border back into the United States. And when they opened the back of the truck, there were 30 children, 12 and under. And when they looked at the faces, they saw that these were children who were already on their second and third round crossing the country. Meaning this wasn't the first time they were being trafficked. He said that broke his heart. To be able to see these young, innocent faces. So we talked about the demographics of who are the people Meaning, where are these children going? Who bought, like, it's an abnormal thing that we live in 2021 and children who are of such a vulnerable population are being taken advantage of in the cruelest fashion. So it was interesting when he shared what demographic is the most, unfortunately, targeted demographic as far as children, as well as who are the buyers. Yeah, who are the buyers? But this documentary, what's interesting about it, so two out of the three producers mysteriously committed suicide. But when they started doing a little research, they realized that it wasn't necessarily suicide. And then a couple of years later, the third one also mysteriously died, right? Because when you're the voice of the opposition, and there's a good cause for you to need to be silenced, it gets dangerous. It gets really dangerous. We know that those who stand up for what they're passionate for, those who say the truth, aren't necessarily saying what's popular. It also doesn't help when you're the one who's saying things and screaming on top of the lungs, but you don't have protection. You see, if I can be in a place of power, if I'm part of the aristocracy, if I'm part of the people who are in, so then I can say things with the knowledge that it's going to be hard for people to attack me because there are going to be consequences to what they do. But if I'm a nobody and I start making a big deal and I start saying things that people don't want to hear, I start publishing things, just facts, figures, information. The need to silence, we think we live in a free world. And to an extent we do, right? Thank God I was able to drive my car, I was able to park it. I don't think anybody was following me last I checked, right? Though they say, there was a guy sitting at home with his wife and they said, it's so funny. They say that Big Brother's always watching. And I wonder if that's true. So he laughed, his wife laughed, Siri laughed, Alexa laughed. Whether we like it or not today. So by and large, we have a lot of freedom. Don't think I'm buying into conspiracy theories, but try saying the things that are unpopular. Do a little experiment. I did this once and got booted from the Shabbat table. I was at my sister's, and I'll share with you the story. Why not? It's a good story to share. Yeah. So I was at my sister's house, who, like I've mentioned in the past, once you marry out, there's already a suspicion of you're never back in. So couple that with, I live in California, which is a very liberal state. I'm a social worker, which is only for crazy liberals who couldn't make it in the math field. So there's a lot that goes on in this conversation. So we're sitting, and this was, I thought, a benign conversation. I didn't know it was a trap, okay? My brother was there with his son, and they had just gone to the DMV, Department of Motor Vehicles, which is where you get your license. So he was telling us a story that he was at the DMV, and he was talking to the judge. The judge's name, Judge Cohen, of course, Judge Cohen in Brooklyn. And the judge was complaining to him that for some reason, the Hasidic Jews are the ones who come in with the most double park tickets. Yeah? Now, I don't know if you have that in London, but in New York especially, the streets are pretty narrow. And think about it this way, 13th Avenue, everybody needs to go into the same store. So it's not one person, it's 500 people, but there are only 20 spots. So inevitably, everybody double parks, meaning there's one row and then there's another. The problem is if you're on the outer row trying, right? So if you're in the inner row, you just drive away. What happens if you actually parked and now somebody blocked you in? You can honk your horn all you want. You can honk for 3 hours straight. If the person is not going to come out, you're stuck. Now, obviously, it's illegal aside from being absolutely disgusting. How could it be that you're so holy, you're going to get chalot for Shabbat, but you're stealing somebody's time? You might as well go home and eat pizza and not block somebody's. There's a skew of values. Okay. So he complained that he sees most of the tickets that he sees from the Hasidic Jews in Borough Park are from double parked. Fine, end of story. So I chime in and I said, I think that he said something valid, which is we have to reevaluate the way we drive on the street, the way we treat the laws of the country, and we have to recognize that they're binding to us too. Now, so far have I said anything that's, no, I didn't think so. Wow. My sister red in the face. How could you say that? You're such an anti-Semite, a self-hating Jew. All the non-Jews, they use what you say. I'm like, wait, what? What did I say? All I said is just because somebody criticized you, maybe the criticism is true. That's it I said. The judge saw something factual. I don't care if he likes Jews, doesn't like Jews. Firstly, you can't call him an anti-Semite. Judge Cohn is a Semite. So whether you like it or not, anti-Semitic he wasn't. Yes? So he's a self-hating Jew, fine. But he's pointing out a fact to you. Now, who cares if the messenger is saying it because they hate you or they love you? If the message is accurate, accept it. And if the message is incorrect, just reject it and send it back. If I get mail, which I frequently do, that says addressed to, and it's addressed to somebody else, I just put it back and I write return to sender, addressee not found. It doesn't bother me, I just send it back. But if the letter belongs to me and it's from the IRS, which is the Internal Revenue Service, and I don't want to pay the bills, it doesn't really help if I want to send it back, it's still mine. You understand? It's not the mailman's fault that he brought me bills. It's not his fault. He's just the messenger. And this led to, I can't tell you, a tremendous upheaval at that Shabbat meal of you and all the anti-Semites, you believe all the lies about the Jews. And I kept on coming back to the point, are the Jewish people doing things that are wrong? Yes or no? Yes, but you don't understand, we have big family. I don't really care. Are we doing something that's incorrect? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, so then we have to fix it. If we're not, so then keep moving. But to always go on the defensive of, it's because they hate us. It's because they want to make us look bad. It's because they don't understand us. It's because they're anti-Semites. It's because you name the list of excuses that we make. And you have to stop and think how almost ludicrous we sound. Right? Imagine I called you out on a behavior of yours, and you would look back at me and say, oh yeah, it's because your glasses are dirty. It's because you hate me. But all I told you is I think that the way you speak can be fixed up a little bit so you sound more professional. That's what I said. Yeah, but you don't understand me. You don't understand how I speak, and you want me to fail. We would look at that comically. And yet, human behavior is such that we do it all the time. When somebody gives us a piece of critique that we don't like, instead of being able to say, let me think about it. I'm not telling you it doesn't hurt. Let me think about what you said. And you may not have even been nice or had good intentions. Right? That's the truth. Sometimes people tell you things, not because they're trying to be nice, not because they're trying to help you, but you have to ask yourself, is what the person's saying true? If it's true, what can I do about it? Do I want to do something about it? If it's not true, okay, keep moving. Who cares? Return to sender. And it's two sides of the same coin. What are we capable of being as messengers? What are we so passionate about that we are unafraid of what the world will do to us in response to what we say? What cause? What advocacy am I able to do till the day I die? Because I am not going to stop until this problem at least gets attention. If not is solved, gets attention. And I don't care what price I'm going to pay. The flip side of it is, what causes, what passions, what critiques make me bristle so much that not only can't I listen, I become a crazy person that it has to attack full-blown back to make sure that you never critique me again. Right? Think about the people, and maybe you, where you would never ever critique them because the price you pay is not worth it. Yeah? You say something to them, hey, by the way, the outfit that you wore, I don't think you asked, in my opinion, it's not so flattering. Yeah. And then for 3 weeks, they don't talk to you. So next time, why in the world would I be honest? You look great. It's amazing. How do you think my work is? I think you could fix it up a little. Okay, now 6 months of silent treatment. At a certain point, it's not worth it. Right? At a certain point, it's not worth it for me to critique you. And obviously, critique has to be done in a very specific way. And I want to look at that. Do you have a hand up, Sarlo, or that's a hand on your shirt? Oh, okay. It looks like a hand on your screen. No, that's fine. I want to read with you. Yeah. Let's look at here. Look at page 3 on the bottom left. You see, we're talking about a character who, on the one hand, Yirmiyahu is so unafraid that even if it's going to lead to his death, which it almost does, he's not going to stop. He will say what it needs to the end of to literally end of the world. On the other hand, you find something fascinating, which is, and we'll look at it as soon as the Jewish people, so he's prophesying doom, begging the people to do teshuvah, clearly in the most graphic ways describing to them what's going to happen. And then it happens. It happens. The Jews are killed. The Jews are murdered. He's trying to walk from Anatot to Yerushalayim, and he can't even get there because the entire path is so bloody. There are bodies strewn all over, parts of little babies. When you read the Lamentations, not just Echa on Tisha B'Av, I don't know about you, I can't even read them because they're so gory. And yet Yirmiyahu's response is not what most human beings would. Most human beings shouldn't, but they do. What's your normal gut response? 40 years you're warning somebody to do teshuvah. Years you're telling them, this is what's going to happen if you don't. These are the behaviors you have to stop. And then it happens. And the Jewish people come to cry to Yirmiyahu Hanavi. Al Naharot Bavel, right? They're on the way down to Bavel. Sham yashavnu gam bachinu. We sat there, we're crying. They meet Yirmiyahu Hanavi. And what would his normal gut reaction be? You tell me.
You mean the prophet of the people?
No, us. Meaning if you told somebody something, you laid out to them very clearly what the consequences would be. Then the consequences happen, and then they come back to you. What is your gut response? Told you so. I told you so. At the very least, give me the satisfaction of pushing it in your face. I've told you not to do this. You asked me, should you borrow somebody else's car? I said, no, don't borrow somebody else's car. It's not worth it. You borrowed their car. You asked me, should I drive somewhere I've never driven? No, you don't know the freeways. You don't know the highways. Don't go there. You did, and then you got into a car accident. And now you're calling me, hey, could I get your AAA number, which is roadside service? And you're biting your tongue because I want to say, I told you so. I told you not to do it. What does Yirmiyahu do? He starts walking with them. He starts crying with them. He starts arguing with Hashem. And he talks back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and says, what are you doing to your children? How could you do this? How could you destroy them? How could you hurt them? So you got angry? How long are you going to be angry? Aren't you the parent here? Aren't you the one who has to be the bigger person? So yeah, they worshipped idols. So yes, they cheated and they stole and they broke all the 613 mitzvot. So what? You be the bigger person here. Let's look at first page 4 before we look at page 3. This is the last chapter of Echa. Yeah, go ahead.
It's like Moses as well, when Moses, when the golden calf and the breaking the tablets, and God was like, I think I'll just destroy these people and we'll start again. And Moses was like, no. Baruch,
Lilinaz, this is when you say Baruch shekivanta. Blessed are you that you had the same thoughts as the rabbis in the Gemara. They make the exact same comparison. Exact same comparison. Baruch shekivanta, really. Where they say the exact same thing. The Jewish people are busy celebrating with the idol. They're dancing, they're singing. Moshe Rabbeinu told you, just stay put 40 days. I'm not asking you 400 years, not 40 months, 40 days. Can you please stay still? He doesn't show up you have to love the Jews. I was once on a trip in Poland. It was freezing March. Freezing, I tell you. It was snowing like crazy. I was with a bunch of rich philanthropists. Don't ask me why I was there. It's a story for another time. I was 19. The average age was 65 and above. Okay? We're in Poland, miles away from home, sitting on this beautiful coach bus with heat, and they were giving out magazines. Don't think one magazine. There were 3 different options in English, another 3 in Yiddish. They were giving out rugelach from Borough Park bakeries. The only thing the women who were sitting in front of me the entire time could do is complain. Complain. They're on the wrong side of the bus. We stopped for too long. We stopped for too short. They didn't like the bathrooms. Their pillow wasn't comfortable. I'm telling you, to lead the Jewish people, there's a reason that Moshe Rabbeinu says, Am Kshei Oref. We are just the stubborn, hard-hearted people. It's difficult. It's difficult. And yet Moshe Rabbeinu, when he critiques the Jewish people, he tells them very harsh words. But when he talks to Hashem, he's going to defend them. He's going to defend them to the extent that he says, V'im ayin, if you're not going to forgive the Jewish people, Mecheni na misifrech. Erase me from your book. I don't want a part of this. You find here something that we dub as in relation to. In relation to the Jewish people, Yirmiyahu as a leader is uncompromising in his words. He is unafraid of what he needs to say to them. He is unafraid of what consequences and punishment he will get for speaking the truth. Because his love for them is greater than his fear. And therefore, he will critique them in the harshest of terms, hoping that they're going to change. But when he is talking to Hashem, he suddenly becomes the greatest defender of the Jewish people. Because he will not stand by and watch his nation, his brothers, his sisters, his family hurt in the way that they are. And you should know this is the brilliance of a leader. This is the brilliance of a Jewish leader who is able to look at his people and internally critique them to the extent that they're ready to kill him. And yet when it comes to their defense, will fiercely defend them even against God. It takes somebody really gutsy to stand up and say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I demand of you, let's look at page 4. This is the fifth chapter of Echa. Now you should know, this is not the only book of Echa that Yirmiyahu wrote. Yirmiyahu, you could spend years learning the Navi. There's a fascinating exchange where he brings the books, the scrolls that he writes, prophesying all the future, and the king takes them, erases the name of Hashem, and throws them into the furnace because he, again, kill the message, kill the messenger. He comes again, once, twice, 3 times. So we're talking about already an edited copy that's not the first scroll that he's written. Look at chapter 5. So he says, Zechor Adonai me hayalanu. Hashem, remember, look at what's befallen us. Habita ure'eh et cherpatenu. Look at our disgrace. Nachalatenu nefcha lezarim, batenu lenachrim. Our houses have been now turned over to foreigners. Yitomim hayinu en av, imotenu kalmanot. We become like orphans. Our mothers have become like widows. Mimenu bakesef shatinu atzenu b'mchir yavoy. We must pay to drink our water, obtain our own kindling at a price. We have nothing. We've been stripped of all our dignity. Al tzavarenu nirdefanu yagenu v'lo hunach lanu. We've been chased and persecuted, and we have no place to even stop and breathe. Mitzrayim natnu yad ashur lizba alechem. Mitzrayim, don't think, all those who, when we were on the winning team, they were nice to us. Mitzrayim, Ashur, they all came to gang up against us. Avotenu chatu veinam, v'anachnu avoteim savarnu. Look, our ancestry, they've sinned, and we're the ones who are bearing the brunt of it. Avadim mashalu banu porek en miadam. And he continues about all the pain, the suffering. Zakenim shal. Look at the last. Al har Zion. Here, let's start. Al zeh hayad daver libenu. Al ela chashru einenu. On this, our eyes have become darkened. We can't see the light anymore. Al har Zion sheshamen shualim halchuba. We see on Har HaBayit, where the Bet HaMikdash, the glory of our nation. Now what? It's rubble. There are foxes walking around. Ata Adonai lo'olam teshev kisacha ledor vadar. He says, Hashem, what about you? You last for eternity. Lama lanetzach tishkachenu. Why would you forget us for eternity? Why would you let the Jewish nation be destroyed like this? Tazvenu lorech yamim. Are you going to abandon us forever? Hashivenu Adonai elecha. Hashem, please bring us back. You initiate. Because if you're not going to be the bigger one in the story, the Jewish people are never coming home. Yes, we did wrong. We sinned. We messed up. But Hashem, it's your job as the parent to bring us back. It's your job as the bigger one in this story to initiate the process of return. Hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva. I promise we're going to come back. Chadesh yameinu kikedem. Renew our days like it used to be. Ki ma'os ma'astani katzavta aleinu ma'ad mod. Because even if you were disgusted by us, enough. Okay, so you got your point across. We've already gotten the message. Hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva chadesh yameinu kikedem. Hashem, bring us back to the way things were. I don't know about you, when I read these words from Yirmiyahu, aside for feeling, wow, the pain of the Jew who's now being taken into exile and being killed and murdered, I look at a leader who his entire life is mocked, hated, beaten, brutally hurt, and yet at the end is able to turn around and say, Hashem, enough. Enough. It's time for you to take the Jewish people back home. Yeah, they did wrong. Yeah, they messed up. So what? So what? You're the bigger one. You're the stronger one. You're the one who lasts for eternity. That ability is mind-blowing. I want to end off with you, if you allow me, with a Mechilta, and then open it up. So you find here 3 different models of leadership. Yeah, I'm on page 3, verse 5. The Mechilta de Rabbi Ishmael. So start with Nimtzet Ata Omer. It's a continuation from a longer paragraph, which is worth looking into. Shlosha Nevi'im hem. There are 3 different types of prophets. Echad tava kvod ha'av. So one of them, now really the word tava means to sue in Hebrew, S-U-E. But over here in context, it means not to sue, but it means to sue, meaning to stand up for, against. Echad tava kvod ha'av ukvod ha'ben. One stood up for both the honor of the father and for the honor of the son. V'echad tava kvod ha'av v'lo kvod ha'ben. And one stood up for the honor of the father, but not for the honor of the son. V'echad tava kvod ha'ben. And one stood up to litigate for the son, v'lo kvod ha'av, but not for the father. Who are these 3 prophets we're talking about? Any guess? Who do you know stands up both for HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Jewish people? That's an easy one. Think about what we talked about today. Very nice. Yirmiyahu. Let's look. Yirmiyahu tava, should say kvod. Kvod ha'av v'kvod ha'ben. Yirmiyahu stood up and brought litigation, both for HaKadosh Baruch Hu as well as for the Jewish people. Shenemar, like he said, Nachnu pisha'enu umarinu. It's true, we are the ones who rebelled. But what does he say at the end? Right? He stands up, he says, but you, Hashem, v'ata, and he continues, of course, we did wrong, but Hashem, you also have to do your part. Eliyahu, so that's Yirmiyahu. Yirmiyahu stands up and accuses both HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Jewish people of wrongdoing. Why? Because he's not willing to come and critique the Jewish people as a Navi without then turning to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and saying, but you have to do your part. You're being negligent in what your end of the promise is. We have Eliyahu HaNavi. Eliyahu HaNavi, we know, Tava kvod ha'av v'lo kvod ha'ben. So we know Eliyahu HaNavi was very strong in standing up for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but he didn't protect the people. Shenemar, like it says, Kano kineti ladonai Elohei tzvaot. He says to Hashem, I stood up, I was so zealous for you. And Hashem responds to him, I didn't ask you to be zealous for me. I know you were zealous for me, but what about my people? If you're going to stand up only for me, who's going to protect them? Uman nomar, lech shov ledarkecha midvara Damasek. Hashem tells him, go back to Damasek. Go back to where you came from. Who needs somebody like you? You think I need you to stand up for me? You think Hashem tells Eliyahu HaNavi, you think I needed you to be so cruel and rebuke the people incessantly in a way that would depress them and hurt them? And Eliyahu says, but I was just being zealous for you. I was standing up for you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's why I make hafganot. That's why I burn down City Hall and I drag garbage into the middle of the street. Lekadei Shem Shamayim, all in the name of God. If you don't know what I'm referencing to, you're blessed. If you do, I'm sorry. My parents live in Jerusalem in the most beautiful neighborhood that every single night there are dumpsters burning. Every single day, the streets are closed because there are punks who decide that instead of them going and playing soccer and riding bikes and doing healthy sports, the sport of being able to pull down the street lamps and being able to burn everybody's garbage, that's night activity. Right? And why? So the song that they sing is Lekadesh Shem Shamayim, all to sanctify the name of God. Hashem says, I don't need that kind of sanctification. I didn't ask you to do it. What happens? Ultimately, Eliyahu gets rebuked. Hashem says, you go back to Damascus. Go anoint Yehu ben Nimshi. He's going to be the next king. And let Elisha take over. Your time's up. You didn't... now don't think. God willing, we'll talk about Eliyahu Navi. Eliyahu Navi Zachor Latov. We're talking about the greatest of prophets. And yet Hashem calls him out and says, you didn't do enough to protect the Jewish people. The last one. Who protects the Jewish people but not God? Think about Rosh Hashanah, what you read as a maftil. I don't know if that helps. Yeah, go ahead, Lily Naz. Very nice. What does Yonah do?
Well, at the beginning, he doesn't want to do anything. He doesn't want to go.
Yonah, I think we could all identify with him. I don't want to do this. Find somebody else, please. I remember in high school when my teachers would ask, like, do we have a volunteer? And suddenly everybody has to go get a book from under their desk. It's like, don't pick me. Don't look at me. No. Yonah says, why in the world would I go to Nineveh, rebuke the people? I know they're going to do teshuvah. And then what's going to happen is going to make the Jews look bad. Hashem's going to say, look, the non-Jewish people who don't have to listen to the prophet, listen. The Jewish people, you could talk until you're blue in the face, and for some reason they don't listen. And Yonah says, I'm not going. I'm not going for the job. Now we know, people don't always say this, Yonah tava kvod haben v'lo kvod ha'av. So Yonah stood up for the son, but not for the father. Shenemar, like it says, Vehi dvar Adonai el Yonah shenit. Hashem spoke to him a second time. Shenit nidaber imo, shlishit lo. Hashem said, I'll speak to you a second time, but not a third time. Because, yeah, you stood up for the Jewish people. Now we know it says, Lo halach Yonah ela la'abed atzmo bayam. Yonah was on a suicide mission. What was his goal? When he went out on the ship, he was not going to go to Nineveh. What was he going to do? Shenemar, like it says, Sa'uni vatiluni alayam. What is he tells the people on the boat when there's a crazy storm. What does he tell them to do to him?
To throw him off the side of the boat.
Throw me over. Please, this is all my fault. I could promise you, look at all the other boats. There's calm. Only our boat has chaos. It's my fault. Throw me over. Now, throw me over means kill me. Okay? Now, this is a very good conversation, by the way, about this, which is of interest to me. I don't know about everybody else. What the different suicides that we have in the Tanakh, and what do they mean? Why is it of interest to me? Because that happens to be my research topic. But here you find, again, Yonah is willing to go on a suicide mission. He becomes the Jewish kamikaze pilot who says, I'm not willing to make the Jews look bad. I'm not going to do something that inevitably will harm the Jewish community. So throw me overboard. And you have here two extremes. Eliyahu Navi, who says, I will stand up for HaKadosh Baruch Hu no matter what. You have Yonah who says, I'm standing up for the Jewish people. And then you have the third one, which is the balance of, I could do both. Yirmiyahu ultimately is the lonely man who gets hurt from both ends, from all ends. What does it help him that Nebuchadnezzar says, don't worry, I'm not going to harm you. You, I'm not going to kill. But all your people, all your colleagues, I'm going to make sure that the rivers flow with their blood. I'm going to make sure that the path is strewn with so many body parts you can't walk from your city, Anatot Yerushalayim. And you look at Yirmiyahu and you say, what a leader. What a model of leadership where he is able to, on the one hand, so much love the Jewish people, so much love HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that he is not willing to give up on either of them. He is not willing to let the Jews bully him into silence. He is not willing to let HaKadosh Baruch Hu finish his plan and annihilate the Jewish people. And that is leadership. That is somebody who is able to stand up for what they know is correct against the entire world. And I think I want to leave us with the question of, number one, what are you passionate about? What is it about, what either area, it does Jewish, not Jewish, what is something that every single day you think about? Something that if you can make a difference in the world, if there was going to be a plaque that had your name and would say, Devorah Halevy, known for, not because you got the plaque and because you made it in the newspapers. What is it that drives you? If there was 1, 2, 3, but let's go with 1, that you are so passionate about that you are willing to commit your entire life to, what would it be? If you don't have the answer, so it's a good question to ask yourself. What are the things that what do I stand for? Because I could tell you what I'm not. So many people could tell you, well, I'm not this, I'm not part of this community, I don't look like these people, I don't dress like these people, I don't believe it. Okay, so define yourself by who you are. Because what you're not, we already got. Can you tell me what the one thing, if I pushed you against the world, I said you could dedicate your life to one project, what would it be? If you could change one thing in this world, what would it be? If there was one cause that you could stand behind for the rest of your life, what would it be? So that's something to think about, number one. Number two is, practically, what would you do? So now that we found the cause, dreaming big. Because what's wrong with dreaming big? So the worst case is all you did is dream. Right? What's the danger of dreaming? So the worst case is you dreamt. The best case scenario is you turned your dream into reality. Right? So my question number one is, what is your dream? What is your passion? Number two is, what does it look like as it unfolds? Yeah. The third one is now flipping us, and we're no longer on the side of the meritorious messenger. You're now the recipient. I'm the recipient. What messages, valid, I'm not talking about the mean, nasty people in your life who you should just shut the door and never open again for them, okay? Sometimes that's the message. You shut the door and you never open it again, yeah? What are though the messages that you know to be true, that when people tell you, you are so hell-bent on making sure that they never critique you again because you can't hear it? That's going to be a hard one. What are the things that you as an individual cannot hear because it causes so much anguish in you, it causes so much anger, whatever emotion it is that you can't deal with it, and therefore you effectively make sure nobody ever critiques you on it? Now, for those of you who are single, the solution to this problem is get married. Suddenly you're going to find that very quickly, I didn't even know this was a problem, but clearly nobody else in the world wanted to tell me this problem, and my husband is brave enough to tell me. So 3 days of silent treatment he'll tolerate, right? But you have to ask yourself, what are those things that, maybe those messages that if I were to listen, they may actually be true. They may actually be told to me not to harm me, but to make a difference. And maybe the messenger who's telling me doesn't have the most noble intentions. That could be. That's another conversation for how to give messages, right? How do you give a message to somebody without causing yourself and the other person to sin? But now we're not talking about the messenger. Who cares if the mailman threw the letter or handed it gently? I still have to open the letter and read it. Yeah. So those are the 3 thoughts I want to leave you with. What are you so passionate about? What would you do about the passion? And the third is the flip side of, what happens when you're on the receiving end of somebody else's passion and it rubs you the wrong way? What are those things in your life that your inability to accept them actually stunt you from the growth that you need? Bezrat Hashem, those are things, I will write them up so that we have them in writing and we know how to share them. I'm going to be turning off the camera.